My name is Gilbert Colen. I was born in the Bronx on August 16th, 1925, in a hospital on Grand Concourse. My father didn't pay rent, and in the middle of the night, in the middle of the morning, at 3 o'clock in the morning, he moved us all up to a farm. We were the only Jews in the area. At that time, there was a draft, and on your 18th birthday, you had to register for the draft, which I did on August 16th. By September or October, I was in the Army, and I had my basic training at Fort McClellan, Alabama. I had 17 weeks of basic training. Came home for 2 weeks, was sent to Newport, Virginia, went on a Liberty ship, took 30 days to reach Oran, Africa at that time. I threw up, I was seasick every day of the 30 days. I was known as the Yeshiva Heaver, which at that time was funny, yet it wasn't funny. And we landed in Oran, Africa, where you froze at night and sweated during the day. I was sent as a replacement at Anzio, and we pushed out of Anzio, and that was my first time in combat. We went into combat, and the Germans were always on the hill looking down at you, and we were always running uphill. And lost a lot of my friends who were 18, 19, 20 years of age. And I was just a fortunate person that I wasn't killed. We were relieved by a Japanese outfit, the Nisi, called 442nd, which was the most highly decorated and the highest casualties in the Army. Their parents were in the internment camp in California. A lot of them were from Hawaii, and a lot of them were from California. First time I saw death, I was in a state of shock. And there happened to be a chaplain. And the shells are going overhead, and he says, sit down by the tree. And I sat down, and he says, when you go into a garden, and I look at him, he says, hear me out. He says, when you go into a garden and you want to pick flowers, what kind of flowers are you going to pick? And I just couldn't understand where he was coming from. Shells are going over, and he's talking about picking flowers in a garden, because I had witnessed my friends being blown apart and laying there. And he says, when you go into a garden, you want to pick flowers that appeal to you. You're not going to pick a weed. You're not going to pick a flower that's dying. I said, no. He says, well, in that way, God picks the best for himself. We came to be relieved with the Nisi, and I was taken back what they call a Reppel-Deppel, where you got a rest. And they took us to Rome, and we stayed in Mussolini's mansion. He had a beautiful mansion with a swimming pool and marble. And then we went back up front, and I tripped, and they thought that I broke my wrist. So the medic gave me morphine and put me to sleep. And the next thing I knew, I was in a hospital in Livonia.
Well, getting back to where you stayed at Mussolini's palace, you said?
Yes.
Was he, had he been executed at this point?
No, I happened to be on furlough, and I had seen him strung up by the partisans. He was already strung up. It was outside of Milan. I don't remember the name of the city. They hung him by wire by the ankles, and with his mistress, Clara Petracci. And I'll never forget, her skirt fell over her head, and her bottom was exposed, and an elderly woman got got a box and pinned up her skirt to her ankles. And I always said that if the world would walk through an army hospital, there might not be any wars. You saw a lot of suffering. I was with a group there was one man who wanted to be a movie actor. He was very, very good looking. He was in an explosion and had his face disfigured. There was another soldier who played the violin. He lost an arm. There was a fellow who wanted to be a dancer. He lost a foot. So it just seemed ironic that all these things happened to these individuals who wanted to make something of themselves, but unfortunately couldn't and didn't.
And the war ruined their...
I'm sorry?
The war really changed their lives.
It changed their life and changed mine. I still have nightmares. I was very bitter when I left the Army. I had very bitter experiences in the Army. I was in combat. I lost many, many friends. One in particular, if I could break away for a moment, when we were in action, the lieutenant wanted a squad at night to reconnoiter the German lines at night, and my squad was picked. I was the only Jew in the company, in the squad, and a man and a young guy by the name of Deneen from Canada said, "I don't think Gil should go." And the lieutenant said, "Why?" And he says, "Because that's SS territory, and you know Gil is Jewish, and if he's ever captured, you know what they'll do to him." And not that I was a hero, and not that I was patriotic, but there was a little patriotism during that time, and I says, "No, it's my duty to go." But the lieutenant ordered me to stay, and this Deneen took my place. And the squad never came back. So because of him, and it brings tears to my eyes every time I think of it, that he saved my life. I still think of the time I was in battle. I think the world today is in chaos. I think that the people in this country don't know that we are at war. I think they're very complacent. And maybe I'm saying that because I'm a little bitter, but I think I have a right to be. Not that I consider myself a hero, but it's just, it's very hard to explain.